What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode. This time we're talking about scaling, how to do it properly, and when to know when you're going to lose quality in your model's detail, and maybe stopping because, maybe you're just going to go a little too far because, I don't know, sometimes we just like to push the limits of our printers. I myself have done some pretty crazy things, and I've tried to print some things that are probably far too large, and I've either learned the lessons of failure or struck the absolute awesome success. Either way, I'm going to go over today some of the different ways that you can do this properly, and you can take something that starts out relatively small and you can make it into something that's really big, to be honest. Now, depending on the types of printers you have and the setups you have, your options and alternatives are going to be different. But one thing you can always do is you can always cut models up and make that, uh, you know, and then put them together. That is an option. You don't necessarily have to make them all in one piece. So it really depends on how you want to do your content, your model in that case, rather. Um, some people don't like putting them together. They don't like dealing with the patching and seaming and stuff like that. So when they make a big model, they prefer to have a joined piece where they can just go, boom, all right, there's the whole thing. It's done. Yay, I'm good. Personally, I don't care. I'll do it either way. But the seams and keys and stuff have to be really well done if you want to do it with the assembly kind of concept versus, just having a one piece. I'm going to go over kind of both, but I also work with a few good artists that make some really good keyed parts anyway. So, I'll discuss the different ways that that can work and how, scaling can have an effect on quality of print. Let's jump into it. All right, here we are in Lychee, and I'm looking at a kobold. I think that's a kobold. No, it's a knoll. I'm sorry. It's too big to be a kobold. This guy's a knoll, and he originally starts out at this size. She's about 48 millimeters. So he's meant for like 32 millimeter play, like D&D, Pathfinder, Warhammer, that kind of stuff. Probably a little too big for Warhammer. This big guy next to him is just double his size, 96 millimeters tall. Now, he would be totally possible to print that size, no problem. I probably wouldn't even have to hollow him. He'd probably come out just fine. Just put some heavier supports on the bottom of the feet. One of the primary things to notice here is the difference of detail. So, obviously, he's meant to be printed small. So, any imperfections that you see like this are going to be much harder to notice when he's this size versus when he's this size. And then you're actually looking at the face once it's printed, and then you can start to see all of the tiny little imperfections in the modeling because, the polys aren't going to be super high when they're like made for D&D. I mean, he's supposed to be tiny. You're not going to see all that. Even with a magnifier, you're not going to really see all that. Anyway, so what happens if you make them too big? Well, you can do something like this. And I think he's the absolute limit. I don't know, let me see. No. Yeah, that's the absolute usable limit, I believe, this printer space that I'm currently messing with. And no, I would totally have to hollow him. He'd be getting fat holes in those feet. That cape would probably be a problem. This arm would have to be blocked. I'm sure the axe would have issues. He's a nightmarish kind of like project if I took it on. But let me show you something else though. At this scale, when we look at him up close, look at how noticeable the lower polys start to look, even his fur. Some of these, you can see the edges of the triangles there. Now, you may think, oh, you're zooming in. When you print this out, the printer's relying on pixels. Okay? Now, if those pixels are representing a image that is rough edges or rough polygons, it's going to look like that. Now, it might not matter to you. You might not care and say, it's going to be negligible. To some folks, this is now considered loss of detail or loss of quality. So that's what I mean. This is how to preserve when you're scaling where your limit is. This is just one example. Now, I also mentioned that you can do scaling with, keyed parts. And, that's usually easier because then you only have to worry about one part at a time. And regardless of the size of your printer, you can see as we go from original size up to like gargantuan. And you guys saw the bigger one I just threw up on the screen. That's actually for an actual project. I'll explain that in a minute. Now, these are pretty good quality. They're pretty smooth, high polys, but even as I start to zoom in, you'll notice there's some rougher edges as the polys start to get lower. You can't put that many polys into a single model part. It can't be that heavy. The programs need to be able to handle it. So there has to be a level of simplicity to it. These have been smoothed pretty well, though. Now, I'll show you another example of what I was talking about there. Now, this is, again, we're stretching the absolute limit here. Notice I've even hollowed and put holes in it, because this would be impossible otherwise. But at this size, I'll definitely have to do some finishing on this, because there's definitely going to be some noticeable polylines that are going to appear on the model at this size. And of course there will be, because I believe this is like 400% scale. So this is huge. I mean, here, what's the actual... This is 13 centimeters by 12 centimeters by 14 centimeters. So this is a decently sized object. And honestly, I don't have printers that could print her legs or body parts or anything else at this size. This is just a project piece because I'm making a bust. So this is it's really just kind of like a one-off thing. But regardless of that, I still know that there's going to be quality loss in some of these areas that where you can see some of the polylines. And for something like this, where it's going to be a very big face, I'm definitely going to notice this when I'm going to go in to finish and paint it. So that's what I talk about when I talk about that with scaling and how to preserve. And one of the other important things to consider when you're scaling is like, when is it time to hollow? Obviously, something that big, yeah. I showed you the other three, these three heads. This one definitely hollow. This one, these two, no, these are fine. You don't have to hollow that. When it starts to get bulky, like that's a big chunk in one spot, I wouldn't do it. Now the Knowles, not you. I wouldn't hollow him, and I know you're probably thinking, well, he's chunky. He is, but he comes together in parts, and it's not nearly as big as that large head. So I think overall, well, maybe it is in some spots. Again, the problem with hollowing figures like the Knoll is that he's got so many. It's better that I demonstrate it anyway. You can see what I'm talking about. So the problem with hollowing characters like this is that they present too many areas that create resin traps and other issues, which become a difficulty when you're cleaning and post-processing the model. So here we look. Now the feet, sure, adequate place for holes. I could put a hole in each foot. No problem. Okay. That has to be blocked because that's a suction point. Now it does connect to the leg, so I mean I could leave it alone. It could drain into the leg. That back cape's not too big of a deal. Okay, the arm is the first big issue because this creates a huge suction piece that's going to be open for quite a while. Now, optionally, you could puncture a hole here. Like I could go here and I could go boom and just put a hole. But that's going to be a giant hole in his arm that you're either going to have to patch or I can make a cap for. Um, or whatever. It's just going to be something you're going to have to fix, fill, or finish. Blocking the arm is actually the better way to do it. And I have episodes that discuss hollowing and blocking and all that, so you can check that out and see different ways that that can be done. But regardless, this is what I'm talking about. These types of models present difficulties when you hollow because of the intricacies that they are. See, the axe head also is mostly hollow, but this right here, that's going to fill. So there's no way that that's actually going to create an adequate drain hole. It's way too small. So it's better that I block those areas using the blocking system and prevent it from hollowing, so that way it doesn't actually become a resin trap or doesn't become a suction point. But that would realistically be the way to do something like that. Now, the big guy, if you were going to hollow him, which I haven't done, uh, if you were going to do that, I mean, ridiculous as it would be to print this monstrosity like this anyway, he would present some difficulties, but would be a bit easier to work with because you have more space. See, look at how much room I have on the foot versus the other foot. That foot is huge compared to the other one. So now again, but so are all the other parts of him. His cape, his front piece, it's all thicker, which means now all this stuff is creating suction points that aren't going to have holes in it. See that? And if I do the suction cup finder, it's going to be a smorgasbord of suction cups. Look at that. Boom. Ooh. This would be a terrible thing to try to print like this. So the hollowing would have to be really clever. Like you'd have to put holes in the back of this cape. You'd have to put holes right here in the front of this cape somewhere. Probably would hollow the arm and just puncture some holes maybe through this or through here and then just patch it when I do my finishing work. Because it's a hell of a lot easier to do that than it is to do all the blocking. I would definitely block the axe though, because that looks like it's just nightmare, and I don't think that's going to be very fun. This arm also needs a hole, and it looks like part of his mouth needs to be blocked as well. But you get the idea. Scaling presents all sorts of issues when it comes to how big you want to make it and what you're doing with it. And this is just one primary example of how that can work. One of the other things you have to consider too is orientation. And I talk about orientation in a couple episodes, but orientation is really important. So let's say you're going to do this one. I'm sorry, this one. That one. And I said you don't need to hollow this, right? So talk about orientation on this. Now, most people would say, the best way to orient it this way. So that way the face is, facing slightly up, away from the build plate. So it's going to get the least amount of support contact, maybe the chin. Oh, I'm actually going to show you another way that I've been doing the heads recently, and that's this way. Now, I know this seems crazy because you're going to have to put supports on the hair, but it's the back of the head. It's literally the best place to put damage. It's the back. You don't need to hollow it, so you don't need access to the key for any holes or anything like that. We're not going to put a hole back there. And it's perfect. It's the perfect way to do it. And I'll show you exactly what I mean. So if we go apply a raft, and then we'll this. Now, if I look at my support structure, take that. Well, we do our basic island detection just to show me where to kind of start. And then I'm going to use my heavier supports to start with, because obviously this is where it's going to start. So I want the heavier support in the beginning. And then you're going to want to place lighter supports like mediums or others around these to secure this as it's printing. But trust me, this will work so much better than printing it the other way around. It'll have much more support to hold on to the head by using the hair than it would by just holding on to the key or the neck or something like that. And a lot of times that's how I was doing it. And so I had talked to a few buddies of mine who do this stuff, and they said, no, you need to do it upside down. And I tried it with a few project pieces that I've been working on, and lo and behold, it really was the better way to do it, at least in some cases. If their hair is absolutely nuts, and sometimes it's like too pointy or pointing in the wrong direction, yeah, it may not work. So consider that one when you're thinking about, you know, how you're going to orient and how you're going to do the supporting, because that will affect it. As far as scaling goes, that's pretty much all there is to it. Like I said, if you have a big piece and you want to cut it, like you want to cut it yourself, now using Lychee isn't the best way to do this. But here, I'll show you. There are ways to do it. Let me go ahead and delete these holes. Undo the hollowing. And then go back to the layout tab. Okay, so now if we go to our tools down here, we can go to split or cut. So we can open up the cut menu, and that will allow us to cut the model. And this will also allow us to make it bigger, right? Cool, yay, woo. So what you can do is you can select chunks. Now, what if you're like, oh, I don't want to select this and this? No problem. You can actually click over here. It says to select cutouts. And then you can say only this, and it will not cut that. I don't know if that's technically going to work because he's connected in two places there, but yeah, no, that didn't actually work. Hang on a second. Yeah, I'm like he's cut in a few different places, so unfortunately, I don't think that'll actually work at that angle. But let's try it this way. I just want to show you guys how the cut system works. So let's say we wanted to like cut off the arm, but we didn't want to cut off any of this other stuff. We just want to cut off the arm. But the problem is this axe is still connected here, right? So in reality, we really have to cut off this hand as well down here. So what you really want to do is you want to try to get it into a position where it's kind of going to be beneficial for both, but not really mess with too much else. So like here, you're losing the hand and you're also cutting off the arm. So if we say, okay, select, take this. Let's see if this will give me the desired effect. Like I said, this isn't the best way to do it. It's a little sloppy. Oh, I think I didn't deselect the leg. I think I might have disconnected the leg. Oh no, that is not what I intended to do. But anyway, you see how it works. There's the part of it. Um, that comes off. Now, if you do it like this, you're not going to get any keys out of it. You'd have to place the keys and the voids yourself. Now, if you do it in stuff like Mesh Mixer or Blender, stuff like that, you'll get keys out of it. Well, you can make your keys. That's a bit more complex and a lot more involved. But if you're just looking to simply like cut stuff in half, like let's say for example, you're like, cool, you know what? I just want to cut dude in half. I don't even care. I want to make him huge, so I want to cut him in half. So you go, all right, great. Just gonna cut him in half. Now, if you wanted to create a very, very, very simple key um, and a void, uh, I mean, you could technically do it, but you'd have to use the primitives, create a cube, and merge the parts. But honestly, you could technically just print the parts this way with the top half and then print the bottom half. And as long as you're stable with the glue, I think you'd be pretty good. Now, obviously, with him cut in half, you could print him like this, and then you could take the other half and you could print him however you want now, because the orientation would be a lot less restrictive because of his newfound freedom of size. Now, the other fortunate thing is that you could now make him bigger. So let's say I'm going to move that. Oh my god, I don't know why there are so many little other parts here. Artifacts, I think, from the cutting. Um, but then we could also go back to here. We could scale. We could say, okay, fit. So now all of a sudden he's 510%. So what's this? 510. So it looks like we'd be able to make him a little bit bigger, maybe. Still might be restricted due to like points that are sticking out here. But let's see. Fit. A little bit smaller, 445. But you get the idea. You can make things bigger, larger, cut them up if you need to, etc. Anyway, that's it for this quick lesson. This went a little bit longer than I expected. I apologize for that. They're supposed to be about 15 minutes, and this one's about 21. But anyway, I got the information into it. I apologize it took a little longer than planned. Anyway, thanks all for watching. See y'all soon. Bye bye.